Good morning, everybody. We're here for our first lecture of the day. We will start with a few moments of silent sitting, just to prepare the mind for the teaching. So just organize yourself in a comfortable posture. Close your eyes. And take a few moments to just be with what there is, with the sounds, with the wind, with the thoughts, with the feeling after breakfast. Just be with whatever there is until you feel you become more and more present. We will take just a few moments here. Now take a deep breath. And when you feel ready, open your eyes. So our topic for this seminar is the way to freedom as presented in the Sankya philosophy. The Sankya philosophy, as I said, is the basis for all the yoga philosophy and all the yoga techniques. It is written like this, Sankya, but actually pronounced with an N. So it can be pronounced like Sankya or Shankya, depends which place from India you come from. And it's the basis of all the yoga tradition. And it presents a map or a model of reality, of how the world is created, and how is man, humans, what is the structure of humans, and what is our journey in this life. And we are going to go through this philosophy, not in a lot of details, but in the details we need to present the way to freedom. During the lecture, I'm going to use some words in Sanskrit, only for those of you who use the language for the teaching, but the words are not important to remember. What is important is to remember the ideas, so don't bother about the words so much. And I will ask questions sometimes, then feel free to answer and share your thoughts and ideas. Then we will have a very nice discussion. And also feel free to ask questions. please, when I give time to ask, try not to interrupt in the middle of a sentence, then we will have a fluent lecture and we can learn well. So we have the way to freedom, which the Sankya philosophy calls Cavalia. Cavalia means actually aloneness, to be alone, or something that is alone. But it's not in the idea of alone as we think, to be lonely or to be alone. We have to view the idea of Cavalia as to be pure. If I give a simple example, if I have a piece of gold, when it is pure gold, there is only gold there, I will say this gold is in like a state of Cavalia. It is alone. There is nothing more that is connected to the gold. But for example, when they take gold out of the earth, it is not pure. It is mixed with other stones and stuff like this. And then it is not in its Cavalic state, or it is not in its pure state. And it goes through a state of purification until we get only gold. So when we think of the word Cavalia, we can think of it in this way, that we want to reach something that will be only us, not nothing else but us. But this us, we will still have to understand what it is. But when we talk about freedom, or let's talk a moment about the opposite of freedom, what will be in your life the opposite of freedom? How will it be manifest in your life? Just simple examples.
Not you.
Sorry?
I am not me.
You are not you. Okay, in what way? In a very simple examples, how will it manifest? When do you say, I am not free? In your life, when are you not free?
When some role is expected from you.
Very good. When rules are put on you, for example. Okay? Or when we have some restrictions are put on us. Or for example, we can say if our mind is full with ideas and thoughts and a little bit, overwhelmed with life, it's like something is added on us, and then we say we are not free, and we can imagine, or we have chains on us, and we can imagine that, like just a simple image of somebody wanting to break free. What will be the movement? Is to put something away from us, is to take the chains off. Yeah? Can you have this idea? So the same idea with Cavalia. It means to take something off of us, something that is now binding us, something that is put on us, and it's like restricting us, restricting our freedom. And then in the process, the way to freedom, we will take this thing that is added on us away until only us left. And the idea of Cavalia is alone. We are left alone without anything else put on us. You understand the idea of Cavalia? Nice, right? Okay. What will be the opposite of Cavalia? Will be the journey to samsara. This doesn't have to be big S, let's do it a small one. Samsara. Samsara, the cycle of birth and death. Or we can say the cycle of life. So imagine what we are already saying, something very special. We say that the cycle of life, being born and dying, is something that is restricting our freedom. This is something that is put on us, and something that we want to shed, that we want to break free from when we do the way to Cavalia. So when yoga talks about samsara, you will find it also in, of course, in Buddhism and things like this. It's always connected to suffering, to what they call dukkha, suffering in this life, because they say the fact that we are living, the fact that we are born, the fact that we die, and we do it again and again, this is something that is different than us. This is something that every time limits our freedom. And this is the thing that we want to break free from. And we will have to see how is this possible, because for now, when yesterday we talked a little bit about what is freedom for us, was freedom to stop to exist? Was this the idea we had of freedom? Not necessarily. We had maybe ideas of freedom as being free on this in this life. But when yoga, Sankya philosophy and yoga, they talk about the freedom, they say be free from rebirth, being free from having another human form or another living form. And we're going to see exactly how is this possible. All right, interesting. Any questions so far? Okay. And then the Sankya says, there is a way. We can imagine ourselves in a given point. And then one way leads to samsara. One way leads to be born again to the world of the living and the dying. One way leads there. And another way leads to Cavalia, to be left alone, not to be anymore part of this samsara. So 2 ways are going, and it's like it's going to show us like the map, what is needed to do, what are the actions needed if we want to go to samsara, what is the way, and what is the way to go to Cavalia if we want to reach freedom, what is the way to freedom. And it's interesting to think about a way. First of all, as always, having some kind of goal. Each way leads somewhere. And there are many ways existing all around us. When are the ways becoming important to us or relevant to us or influence our life? Only when we walk them. There can be many ways, but they influence our life only if we start walking them. So the Sankya tells us these 2 ways, one of them you're already walking, whether you like it or not. It's this way, the way to samsara. And we will see exactly what actions that we take are leading us to this, to be born again, to stay in this cycle of living and dying. And they say, but there is another way, and we can introduce you the techniques, the actions needed to take this way. And then if you start to take the other way, for sure you will reach Cavalia. It's not a maybe. It's like the way to my house. If I give you instructions how to reach my house, and you follow the instructions, you are going to reach my house. It's not a maybe. I know exactly, I know for sure you are going to reach the house. The same goes here. For sure, if you follow some kind of actions, you are going to samsara, like a place, samsara. And for sure, if you follow the other techniques or the other steps, for sure you are going to reach Cavalia. It's only a matter of how long you are going to follow the way, like any other way. Because if I give you instructions to reach my house, but in the middle you get tired and you stop walking, or there is something else distracting you and you stay there, then you will never reach. It is still the way. And the instruction I gave are still the same instruction. They are still the correct ones to reach my house. But it all depends if you do the way, if you take the steps or not. And we have to see that in this life, eventually when we want to walk, or when we want to reach something, we have to walk. It doesn't matter how many wonderful maps we have, how many wonderful instructions we've been given. If we don't do the action of walking or driving or riding the bicycle, something has to be done in order to reach. The same goes here. The yoga, the Sankya philosophy draws the map, and the yoga gives the techniques, the actions that are needed to reach the place. So this is one of the things I love most about yoga, because it's not something you can live in theory. If you live with theoretical knowledge, and yes, there is Kaivalya and there is samsara and I know the way, it's not going to take you there. It is only if you follow the techniques that yoga gives how to reach the Kaivalya, then for sure you will reach it. But action is needed. This is why they say about yoga, for example, in a text called Bhagavad Gita, there is a question there, what is more important, knowledge or action? And they say the knowledge is important, but action is must, because you have to put the knowledge into action if you want to reach somewhere. So in these lectures, in this seminar, we will also meet the techniques that are necessary to do the way, and then it will be up to you if you want to do the way or not. And you will, if you put the techniques into practice, you start to do it, for sure you will reach the freedom. This is not there is no question mark at the end of this. This is guaranteed. Any questions? I like to view this point as any moment in our life. In any given moment in our life, we have the option to choose whether we are going towards samsara or whether we go towards kaivalya. It's not like this long journey that we're taking. It is also a long journey, but it's much more interesting to view it as in this moment, in every given moment, I can do an action that will take me towards samsara, and I can do an action that will take me towards kaivalya. This is very optimistic, because even if I have for some time did a lot of actions that take me towards samsara, it's not that I have to come back all the way and then find the junction and then go to kaivalya. From this point that I'm here, there will be another junction. There is a junction, and in that moment I can then take an action that will lead me towards kaivalya. So every given moment in yoga is a moment of choice, to choose our action and to see which way we want to go. And it's not a problem if we go to samsara. It's only that we are going to experience the result of it. So we will see that the suffering grows, and we will see that our freedom is diminished, we can say, or becoming. We become less free. We will become more enslaved, more bound. And if the moment, every moment that we take a step towards kaivalya, we will see suffering going down, and we will see that in that moment we grew in freedom. And that's about it. You know, it doesn't have to be more. Don't think of like some special experience that is going to happen one day and that you're struggling to reach. It's not this. It is the little choice we have in any given moment, if we go towards samsara or towards kaivalya, towards more suffering or less suffering, towards more freedom or less freedom. This is our choice. Okay? Any questions? So, to continue, now that we understand what is the way, I'm going to present the model of Sankya, how it views reality, how is the world created, or all the structure of reality according to Sankya. I'm not going to give it in complete detail, but enough for us to understand the journey and what is important for us. Before that, maybe this way to samsara, it has a name. It is called Boga. Boga means experience. So it is through the way of experience that we go towards samsara. And the way to kaivalya is called apavarga. Which means release. So when we take the way of releasing, And if we talked before about being alone, so we can understand the idea of releasing, then when we take the way to release, or of releasing, then we will reach Cavalia. In our lectures, we will start today first to explore the Boga, to understand how it looks, the way to Samsara, because we all have experience there already. So we can share our experience of this way. And then we will reach the Apavarga, and we will see how to go there. So the model of Sankya. Sankya says, in this life, this human life, we are made of two things, two potentials, completely different from each other in characteristics. Both of them are potential, but they are completely different from each other. And both of them are necessary to make this human form. So our life, as we know it now, is composed of two things, like two elements. And it's interesting to say that, to create something, you always need at least two things that come together. So the same in this human form, according to the Sankya, there are two elements needed, or two potentials needed to create this human form. One of them is called Purusha, and the other one is called Prakriti. The meaning of the word Purusha is very nice. It means the one that lives in the city. The one that lives in the city. When they say Purusha, what they mean is our conscious element. The seer, the one that experiences, the one that sees, or what I like to call awareness, our aware element. And why do they call it the one that lives in the city? Because for them the body and the mind are the city. And there is like this conscious element residing inside the city. And both of them together, they make our human life. And both of them have very different qualities. The Purusha in us is constant. It is unchanging. And it is aware. And the body and the mind and the body are like the vehicle that this unchanging awareness sits in, or like the city where this aware elements lives. And it is interesting to view the relationship between, we take a person, but don't be confused, between a person and the city that he lives in. What is the relationship between a person and the city? What do you think? What was first, the person or the city? The person. And then why did the city develop? What is the function of the city for the person that lives in the city? Why are there cities? Why cities developed?
The city is a good place for the person to live.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the city is the place where the person can live. And it gives the conditions for this person to live. It supports the life. This is why cities started. If you think, go back to history, think about the first city that developed. First there were people, and then they needed some protection. Then they built walls, and they built houses, and then they needed food. And they needed a lot of things in order to live in the city. But imagine now these people leaving the city. What will happen to the city? All the people leave the city. They go out of the city. What will happen to the city?
Not food.
Huh?
Not food.
Not food?
When all people live in the city.
they go, what happens to the city?
When they go,
Yeah. What happens?
nature takes the city.
Yeah? The city dies. There is no more functioning of the city. Okay? The city actually is realized to be something dead. It was the people inside the city that gave the city, we can say, the life, made it valuable, made it function. The city served the needs of the people inside. But the moment the people are gone, the city cannot function without them. The city is only, it will be a mass of buildings and maybe food and stuff like this and vehicles, but there will be no more movement there, no more life in it. So when we think about Purusha and Prakriti as making our human form, we say there is some conscious element living inside the mind and the body. The mind and the body are serving this conscious element in its journey in life. It's like our vehicle in this life. But the moment this conscious element is gone, this mind and body is not going to continue to function. They have no purpose anymore. They are going to die. And we can see it when a person dies. It's really interesting to see, because the body stays completely the same. But there is some, like the personality, the thing that was there, the thing that we communicated with, the awareness, the consciousness that was there in the body is gone. But the body is there, the mind is there, the brain is there, everything is there, but something is missing. The thing that is missing is the Purusha. It's like the Purusha left, and then only the city stayed. But the city without this conscious element inside it is not worth nothing, is not going to function. So, when we talk about the Purusha, we say it is unchanging, and it can live in different cities. For example, if we say one person living in a city can decide to move to another city. The person is the same, but he can live in different cities along the life. The same, the Sankya says about us. We are the same, this conscious element, but we can occupy different bodies. We can occupy different mind and bodies in our journey in this life. For us, we don't have the experience of it, because we only know our life in this body, but in the theory of the Sankya, it talks about this, that we can occupy different cities, but all the time, we stay the same. It is only the city, the body, the mind, or our vehicle in this life that changes. So, we are this unchanging aware element, and in this life, we are inside the all the time changing and temporary, element, just like the city. We can see that the city is all the time in movement, is all the time changing, all the time something is happening there. For example, you can live 50 years in the city, you are mostly the same, but the city can change a lot. And we can see, if we talk about our own little city, our mind and our body, we can see how the mind and the body, they change with the years. But us that are inside, when we say I, it was the same I when we were 3 years, and it is the same I when we are 50. We mean the same conscious element is still there, but what it is living inside, this is all the time changing. So the nature of the second element of Prakriti, that is changing, it is temporary, and it is unconscious. It is only matter. There is no consciousness in there. There is no awareness there. The aware element belongs to the Purusha. It is interesting to know the word Prakriti, which means motion or movement. So the idea of one element that is never changing and never moving, together with an element that is always moving, always changing, and together these two elements, they are what make us alive. This is what gives us this human form. You take one of them, everything collapses. So in this life, we have both of them working, or both of them necessary, and we will see in a moment how they are important for our journey towards samsara or towards kaivalya. Any questions? Yeah. Another interesting thing to see is that yoga likes to call the mind and the body this the city of 9 gates. So it's like a city, and the gates are the senses, all the openings, not only the senses, but all the openings of the body. These are like the gates through which things can enter or go out. And so the Purusha lives in the city of 9 gates. This is the basic structure of humans, all humans, according to Sankya philosophy. And in this state, when they are separated, each of them is pure. We can say each of them is like in kaivalya. They are not mixed. So the Purusha, when it is only in this, not connected yet to Prakriti, this is the state of kaivalya. And because this is us, and this is our city, we can already understand that the journey towards kaivalya is a journey towards realizing the Purusha, realizing our nature as awareness, as consciousness, separated from the city. Because now in this life, we are mixed. We are the Purusha and Prakriti together. But in the journey towards kaivalya, we said we want to have it pure. We want to take out everything that is different than us. Then, in this journey, we can already understand what we will have to let go of. What do we will have to understand that is different than us? The city, the Prakriti. Okay? Or, if we talk about our own human form, the mind and the body. It will be a process of realizing that the mind and the body are different than us, and realizing our nature pure, not attached to something else, not bound, not restricted by mind, not restricted by body. Every time we realize this true nature, or we can say even every time we act according to this, we go towards kaivalya. And every time, we will see, of course, more deep later, every time we go in the other direction, towards identifying ourselves with the mind and the body, we move towards samsara, towards the cycle of birth and death. Questions? So, we understand that we want to realize this element as being pure, alone. This will be the state of kaivalya, realizing our aware element, our conscious element. But in this life, Sankya says, Purusha and Prakriti, they came together to create life, to create this human form. And in this life, we have evolved, we have manifested in different levels that we can say it's from the more subtle to the gross. And I will just describe it in a general way, not with all the details. And they say, in us, when we already talk about the human form as combined from Purusha and Prakriti, from the unchanging, the conscious element and the changing element, the first thing that came into being is what they call Buddhi. Buddhi, like the word Buddha. The word Buddha means awake. And the Buddhi is this awake element inside of us, the aware element inside of us. For example, now that you listen to me, you are aware of what I am saying. There is some conscious element, active element, that is hearing, that is grasping, that is thinking, that is experiencing. And we can feel it, that we are aware, this feeling of we are aware. You know this feeling? Yeah, that now you are aware to what I am saying, you are awake. This is the idea of Buddhi. There is some kind of awake, somebody who is awake there, that is listening and experiencing and asking questions or keeping silent, doesn't matter. This is, many times they will call it, when they translate text of Sankya or stuff, the intelligent part. You know, the part that can view the things and can analyze and that look like the intelligent, intelligent part of us. But I like to call it better the conscious part, that we feel, that we are aware, that when we say I, we mean this one. No, I can feel it. I say I am aware, I exist. All of this goes to this idea of Buddhi, the thing that is awake inside of us. So first there is this, and then as the humans develop, or as we come into being, we start to also have the element which is called ahankara. And here again it's nice to understand the word in Sanskrit. It means aham is me and kara is action. I am the action, I am the doer. So it is not only that we have this conscious element in us, but we also have the ability to act and the identification with the action. For example, when we talk about ahankara, I am the doer, it is this place in us that have the identity or that develops identification with the actions that we are doing. For example, imagine two people finishing a yoga teacher training course. Only one of them will develop the identity of a yoga teacher, but both of them have certificate for teaching yoga. But only one of them will develop identity of yoga teacher. Who? Who will develop identity of yoga teacher after finishing teacher training course? Only
the one who really does teach.
Very good. Only the one that teaches. Because he does actions of teaching, then identity of yoga teacher develops. Because our actions, they create our identities. And in this idea of ahankara, this is what they want to say. We start to develop identities of doers, of actions, according to what we do in life. So, for example, if we teach yoga, we will start to say, we are yoga teachers. If we have children, we will start to develop the identity of mothers. If we, whatever we do, we start to develop the identity of this. So we have this element, not only one that is awake, but only an element in us that identifies itself according to the actions it takes. And if you view your life, ask yourself for a moment, what am I identified with? Yeah? Give some identifications you have. You will see all of them are actions that you are doing in life. If you say, I'm a mother, I am a sister, I am a photographer, I am a teacher. It's all because you have been doing these actions for a long time. And things that you have not done, or you have not done regularly, you don't have identification there. And you can see in your life how they developed slowly. Can you see it? Yeah? Okay. So, as we come into this human form, we have first some conscious element then that can observe, that can watch. Then we have the doer and the identifications with what we are doing. And then we have another element which is called manas. And manas is the active mind. The active mind which we use for thinking. For example, the mind that you are using now to listen to me, or to think about what I say, or maybe you're thinking about other things. This is this active mind. So it's not only that we are aware, or that we act in life and we identify ourselves as doers, but we also have a mind which we can use in this life, in this human form, that helps us to perceive the world, through which we perceive the world. We can think about the world, we can decide which action to take, and we can execute action. For example, now when you're listening to me, first you perceive, and then you think about what I say, and then, for example, you can decide to raise your hand and ask a question if you want to clarify something. So all of this is done in the mind, and we can say this element is the element where we also come into contact with thoughts and emotions. Where all thoughts and emotions happen, this is in the manas part of our human structure. So buddhi will be the consciousness, the one that looks, that sees. Ahankara will be the doer and the one that identify itself, our self-identifications, and our active mind, our thoughts and our feelings, and our ability, of course, to think. Any questions so far? And now we have a mind, and the mind is connected to what? In this human form? Try to think. What is our mind connected to? In order to perceive the world, in order to execute actions, what do we need? We need to be in contact with the world. What give us, makes, Senses, very good. What they call indriyas. No, I put it here, but you will understand. Indriya are the senses. Because one thing is to have a mind, but in order to perceive the world, we have to have the ability to hear, to taste, to see, all the senses that we need. And according to yoga, there are not only the 5 senses of the West, there are also 5 senses of action. The ability to hold things, the ability to move in the world, the ability to communicate with sound, the ability to put away waste and to reproduce. So we have all these things that compose the human system: the aware element, the identifications, the active mind, the senses, and eventually, what do we need? We need material stuff. Yeah, because we cannot, it's like we said, all of these are like subtle elements. They are like functions. But eventually, everything has to be wrapped in some material, in some, in something that can keep it alive. Simple example can be a computer. One thing is the hardware of the computer, but what is the point of the hardware of the computer? To store the software. How the computer is processing information. What are the abilities of the computer? What it can do? All of this is not material stuff. It is stored in the chips, you know, in all of this. I don't know much about technology, but I know the difference between hardware and software. So the same here. So far we have talked about like the software, what makes this human system function, and eventually all of it has to be wrapped in material stuff, and this is our matter, which the Sankya calls bhutas. Okay? Eventually we are matter. Okay? So this is in general the view of humans according to the Sankya philosophy. We have the software, all the abilities, the ability to be aware and to identify and to think. And then we have the sensors, the senses to be in contact with the world. And then we have the body and the outer world. So this is the idea of how humans, or how this world is created according to the Sankya philosophy. And all of this is going to be born and to die, and to be born and to die again and again. Because all of these elements, all of this big structure, and we can see it, our structure, is a temporary one. It has the qualities of prakriti. For example, what can you say about your body? Is it changing or is it constant? Is it temporary or is it eternal? Of course, it is temporary. Of course, it is changing. What about the senses? Are they eternal or are they changing? Are they constant or changing? And we can see also the senses have the characteristic of being changing. What about our thoughts and emotions? What about them? Are they constant? Are they stable? And all of us know, we know how quickly they change, how quickly they transform. What about our identities, our actions? Are they temporary? Yes, also. When we were born, did we have the identification of a teacher? Not yet. Did we have identification with our name? Our actions were limited. So, also this we can see it has some temporary characteristics, and then our conscious element. If we look, when we grew up, one thing that we grew up in, we can say, is in consciousness, in awareness. If you look at children, you will see that they are not aware. Have you noticed? That they are like, they live in their own world, but they are not completely aware of who they are, not completely aware of the world outside, and this is why they can do pretty crazy stuff sometimes. But then the more we grow, we become more aware, and then with this awareness, we become more self-aware of how we are and how we behave. We become more aware of the society and how the things are. And we can see it, and also one thing that we become aware of, for example, is of life, how fragile life is. Do you remember yourself as a child? We had no fear. We could do everything, or many children, they are fearless. And then as we grow, then we are becoming more aware of life, and then also of the temporality of life, and we become maybe more fearful of losing the life, or more careful. So also this conscious element inside of us grows, transforms with the life. So all of this structure is actually belongs or has the characteristic of the city of Prakriti, of something that is changing and temporary. But all of this will not take place, will not manifest, unless it was serving something or somebody. And who is it serving? Us. The one that lives inside the city but is different than the city. Okay? Is it clear, this idea of Sankya? Yeah? Okay. And now, how all this is connected to the Boga and to the Apavarga. What is our goal? Remember? Our goal, the way to freedom, when we talk about the way to freedom, our goal is this, realizing this element, the Purusha element, not connected to this body, not connected to our identifications, to our thoughts, ideas, senses and body. And we want to realize this nature that is unchanging, unmanifested, that cannot live and die, that cannot take shape or lose shape. We want to actually realize something that we can say that doesn't exist. Yeah? This is why the journey is so interesting, because we will see that we can very easily investigate things that exist. But to investigate before that, and all things that exist, what can we say about them? What nature they have? What kind of characteristics? All of them have changing character. Everything that exists is going to transform. Everything that exists is going to change. Do you agree? So we know to investigate into the nature of what exists, of things that we can perceive, which means that we all the time only investigate into the nature of Prakriti, of things that are temporary and changing. And we will need some special tools, some special techniques if we want to now to investigate something that doesn't exist, something that has no form, because form is something that changes, something that has no smell, no color, no sound, no nothing, something that cannot be perceived by the senses, cannot be perceived by the mind. How are we going to do it? We are going to need something very special, which we are going to see later. So, our journey is to reach this place, but in our life, where are we mostly? In this, this is us, all this buddhi, ahankara, manas, the senses and the matter. This is our human life. Where are we mostly spending our life?
Manas.
In the manas, very good, in thoughts and feelings. Where else? Where do we usually identify ourselves with?
Senses.
The senses and the body. Okay, this is where we are mostly. We are, for example, if somebody asks you who you are, you will say, I'm a woman or I am a man. Why? Because we have a woman body or a man body. Or if somebody asks us who we are, we will say, I am shy, I am brave, I am like this or like this. This is all characteristics of the mind. Or they will ask me who I am. I will say I am a yoga teacher, I am a daughter, I am a whatever. Again, things that are of the temporary and changing nature. So, in this life, we are completely, or we are far away from realizing this conscious element inside us. We are completely involved with our human system, with the changing and temporary part of our human system. And the more we live, the more we become identified with our human life. And this process that we go we can say like we go down with life, or we go more into identifying with the mind and the body. This is the process that is called boga. And it develops through the experiences we have. For example, think of a newly born baby. What does it identify with? How many thoughts and feelings does it have? How connected it is to its body? Not much. There is still this kind of purity in babies, something that is not yet well formed. Even the body is not yet complete. The colors of the hair is changing, the color of the eye is changing. There is still a lot of transformation that is going to take place. So the baby is born not aware and quite pure in this. And then after a few days it is given a name. Okay? Already some identification. And then it starts to grow, it starts to get the characteristics. And then the mother says, it's so interesting to see children with the parents. They start to say, oh, he's shy, or he's sensitive, he's like this. We start to give them character, although they don't know what shy is, they don't know what afraid is, but we start to give them these characters. And if you look at your life, you will see that maybe many ideas you have about yourself are actually ideas given to you from outside. That you have heard many times that you are shy, or that you're pretty, or that you're this or that, and you have started to take it as your identity. And then the more we grow and we start to do some actions, and we start to be maybe some repetitive with some actions. We start to play the piano every day. And we study piano, or we start to draw every day. Then we start to develop the identity. I am a pianist, I'm a musician, I'm an artist. Where did it come from? It wasn't there before. It came from the experiences in our life that we have started to take these different identities. And then as we grow, we start to have different emotions. We become aware of the emotions, different ideas and thoughts, and we start to identify ourselves with what we feel. And also, the society helps a lot when it asks us, for example, tell who you are, give 3 good characteristics of yourself and 3 bad characteristics. What do we give? We give characteristics of the mind. We say we're angry, we're happy people, we're optimistic. It's not of the Purusha that we give. We start with the experiences of life, start to give our identifications, or to identify with what goes on in our mind, in our active mind. And eventually we become, with the experiences of life, we become more identified with the body, until we think that we grow, and then we think that we become old, and then we think that we die. So we can see that this journey of boga is actually an unavoidable one. It is a natural one that all of us go through with life, and the more we go through in the boga, we become less and less free, because freedom was the purity of Purusha. And see how many layers we have already put on ourselves. And if we ask ourselves, what have we been fighting all our life to get freedom, we will see that we have been fighting these things. Maybe some people were fighting their body. They want to break free from the body. Maybe some people wanted to break free from the mind, or before the mind, the senses which are very much connected to our desires. So How many times have you fought with your desires and you felt that you were the slave of your desires and that this was what was binding you and you were trying to break free of that? And how many times our struggle for freedom was freedom from thoughts? Even yesterday when we described what was freedom for us, we said peace of mind. You know, this silence of the mind. We were trying to break free of this endless movement, which is the characteristic of the mind. It must be like this. So we were trying to break free from thoughts and emotions and things like this. How many of us were fighting our identifications? You know, not to be, for example, all the ideas we have about ourselves or the ideas that society has about ourselves, that we feel that this is what what limits us in this life. You know, that if only I could break through these ideas, these self-perceptions that I have, or the perceptions I have even of others, if I can only let go of this, I will be free. So we can see that naturally, with the process of Boga, we started to feel more and more imprisoned, more and more in chains, and naturally, most of us, started to fight it or started to look for a way out. But all our struggle to find freedom, where did we look for the freedom? Where do you think? Your struggle for freedom or your search for freedom, where was it? What was the characteristic of your freedom? Was it eternal one? Or was it a temporary one, the freedom that you have reached? Temporary. Why? Where did you look for the freedom? You look it? Sorry? Outside. Very good. For example, in temporary things outside. Vacation. Yeah, we can say for many people vacation is a form of freedom, or being out of the army or out of school, you know, or being in the countryside. This is freedom. But all of these things, we are there only for a temporary time. Even people that decided to move to the countryside, and in the beginning they felt completely free. How long did it last? Very short. After some time they have realized that even in the countryside there are things restricting them. So we were looking for freedom outside. Where else? We were looking for freedom in a state of mind, the feeling of freedom. But what do you know about feelings? What do you know about emotions? Sorry? Changing. All the time. All the time. So what is the point in trying to hold a state of mind of freedom? It will always change, and then we can feel it. We go to a yoga seminar and we do some practices and we feel free, but then we go back home and where is this freedom gone? Or we go to a silent retreat and there we have a lot of freedom because we don't talk and we don't use the cell phone, and we think we have reached some kind of freedom, but the moment we get the cell phone back and we start talking again we realize we are not free. So as long as we look for freedom in this life, we actually become more and more slaved, because it keeps us in constant action, in constant search for the next freedom. And maybe you can see it in your life that, okay, we came to this seminar and here maybe we feel a little bit more free, and then the seminar is done, and then I have to look for the next thing to give me the sense of freedom. And then this will also be gone, and then I have to look for the next thing and the next thing. So by searching for freedom in this life, we actually become more and more slaved. Do you understand the idea? Also, it's interesting to note, for example, if people that think that money will give them freedom. You know this? Maybe you thought about this sometimes, that if only I had like some millions of dollars, I will be free. But does it give me freedom? No, why not? What?
Temporary.
It is temporary, and it requires a lot of actions. Because if I have a lot of money, I have to do a lot of actions to manage this money. So I realized that actually I become more and more occupied and less free. And we can see these people because there is a lot of things to take care of. So all these things so far that we thought that will give us freedom actually took us on the other way, on the boga way. It gave us more and more experiences. It got us more and more involved in this world, and we had to do, and more, we can say, towards samsara, towards being involved with the temporary things, with the world of the living and the dying. So this is the way of boga. All of us go through it very naturally, and but for yoga this is not a problem. But this is it has to be like this, and then comes the point when we start to realize there is another way. But we will talk about it in a moment. Any questions so far?
And you still clarify this Buddha.
The Buddha?
Yes.
Buddha is the elements, the material elements. And then in the full structure of Sankya philosophy, the full model, they specify exactly which are the elements. There are subtle elements and more gross elements, but for our discussion is now not important. Any other questions? Let's talk a little bit more about boga. Our whole process in boga, going through towards the world of experience and towards being more and more involved in samsara, is actually, as we said before, walking away is always depending on the actions that we take. And our actions that takes us in the boga, that take us towards samsara, are actions that are depending on our identification or the fact that we do not distinguish between who we really are and the city that we live in. And it is presented in a very nice model, very simple to understand, that is called kleshas. And I will write them here. Klesha is like a source of suffering. Or for our discussion, we can say it is the way or the things that cause us to move towards boga or towards samsara, towards more and more suffering or toward slavery in this world. And it shows very nicely how these things are, how our suffering or the samsara, or how we lose our freedom the more we go. So they all start from the very simple fact that yoga calls, or Sankya calls, avidya, which means that we have wrong knowledge about who we are, or we lack knowledge about who we are. Vidya is knowledge, and avidya is lack of knowledge. And this lack of knowledge of who we are, we lack the knowledge that we are this conscious, unchanging element. And instead, what knowledge do we have? That we are all this, the prakriti, the city, that we are the mind and the body. And this we have from the beginning, because they tell us like this, they educate us that they tell us you were born and you will die, and this is your name, and all of these things that we have already described. So it is from society, from the very beginning of our life, that we get this wrong knowledge. And it is interesting to note that in India, in the past, the children were not taught that they were the mind and the body. They were taught that they were Brahman, the unchanging, the supreme spirit, we can call it, this one thing that is there. So it was taught to them from stories and songs and things like this. And the parents also, if it was parents that had this knowledge, they were living like this idea. And they were talking about the body as being something temporary, and that you get another body. And they talked about incarnation and reincarnation and all of these things. So it was very much in the culture of India to talk this language of Sankya. But in our Western society, completely the opposite. We were, from the beginning, told that we are the body, and this is what there is, only this life, there is nothing afterwards, and we live and we die, and all of this. So we have this wrong knowledge about who we are. And then, because we have this wrong knowledge about who we are, we start to identify ourselves. This is called asmita. We identify ourselves with the body and with the mind. And so we lack the knowledge of who we are, and then as a result we identify ourselves with the body and the mind. And because we identify our existence, imagine our existence with the body and with the body and the mind, it becomes most important for us what happens with the body and the mind. It's like, for example, we can see that we say we are okay when we have a pleasant feeling. And when we have feelings like love and happiness and, I don't know, these different sensations that are pleasant, then we say, oh, we are okay. But the moment we have feelings that are not pleasant, like anger or sadness or loneliness, all of these feelings, immediately we think that something is wrong with us or something is wrong with our life. So, as a result of this identification with the mind and the body, we started to be very much concerned with what happens in the mind and the body. And then we can find ourselves always looking, always in desire for what is pleasant. This is called raga. Maybe I will write all the things. This is wrong knowledge. And this is identification. And raga is the desire for pleasure. And it is very interesting to see that actually all of us are the same. In any given moment of the day, what are we looking for? Pleasure. We want the food to be tasty. We want the weather to be nice. We want the lecture to be interesting. We want the company to be pleasant. We all the time want the pleasure. All of us, every day, throughout the whole day. We want to sleep well. We don't want nightmares. We want our loved ones to be okay. We all the time look for pleasure. Why do we look for pleasure? Because we say if there is pleasure, if we experience pleasure, then we are okay. Then our life is okay, or we are okay. Why do we say we are okay? Because we think that we are the mind. So if everything is okay in the mind, then everything is okay with us. we always look for this pleasant feeling in the mind. And to go with the desire for pleasure, there is the aversion from what? Suffering. Yeah. What happens the moment the food is not so tasty, or we didn't sleep well, or the lecture is boring? Immediately, what do we think? Oh, I should go somewhere else. I'm not sleeping well here, I need to go home. The food is not good, I need to find better food. The lecture is boring, I need a better teacher. No, it's like this. Immediately, all of us, the moment we are uncomfortable, the moment we are not experiencing pleasure, or the moment we experience suffering, immediately we think of how to get out of this mess. Can you see it in your life? Yeah, this is the story of every day in our life. For me, it is one of the most interesting and funny things, because I can just see myself like this all day. It's not something that I choose to do. It's something automatic in the system. Is like this. To support the life, we all the time look for the pleasure. We all the time try to avoid the suffering. And then, as a result, what we have is what is called abhinivesha, which is fear. So many times they translate it as fear of death, but it's not, or the fear to lose life, but it's not the fear of only the fear of death or the fear to lose life, but it's the fear that the pleasure will be taken away from me. How much do you fear that? If you have, somebody you love, what is your fear? That he will go away, that you will lose him. Or the fear that what I want will not come. For example, I want to be accepted to some job. Then I fear that they will not accept me. Why? Because I want it, because this is pleasure for me. So there will be fear of losing the pleasure or not getting the pleasure, or fear of getting suffering. What do you fear of? We fear of getting cancer. We fear of, whatever. Fear of many things. Something bad will happen. Or we fear that something that is already bad, the suffering will not go away. For example, if we have pain in the knee, we start to fear that it will never go away. If we have some kind of disease, we start to fear that it will never go away. So this fear is only a result of our desire for pleasure and our aversion for suffering. I don't know.
What is the last word?
What, here?
No, before that.
This one? Abhinivesha. Abhinivesha. So, the Sankya and the Yoga, they say something very simple. They say, when this decides our actions, we are on the path to samsara. We are on the path of boga. Why? When we have actions based on the kleshas, these lead us to action. When we do actions based on the kleshas, this leads us on the way to samsara, on the way of boga. Why? Who can explain?
It's changing. It is changing.
Okay, and then what happens?
Goes around. Action, need on kokemukset, mis oli inglise experiences. Action is experience. Experience is the way that goes boga.
Okay, but we will see that there are actions that take us away from experience also. But what is typical to these actions? What will happen to them? What are our actions here? What are we trying to do all the time?
Be good.
Good. Oh, very good. We try all the time to hold something that makes us feel good, and we all the time reject something that makes us feel not good. This is our life. For example, we can be in a relationship. As long as my partner makes me feel good, my action is hugging, but the moment he makes me feel not so good, immediately I try to start think about divorce. And so when these actions decide our life, or when these are the actions in our life, what will be the characteristic of them? We try to get good, we try to avoid the bad, but are we going to succeed? Will we always be able to hold pleasure? Will we be always able to avoid suffering? Are you able to do it? No. So we see that when these things decide our actions, we can never stop from acting. And this is the bondage. This is why it takes us into experience and into samsara, because we all the time have to react. Now I'm feeling good, then I'm trying to hold, but now I'm feeling bad and now I have to avoid. And if you see your actions, when they are based on this, they are very not constant. You started to do a project, it became difficult. What do? You stop. And then you started a relationship and it became unpleasant, you stop. And then all the time we are bound to do another action and another action, because this is never still. This is never going to be constant. All of this is always going to be some temporary pleasure or temporary suffering, and the fear is going to be there deciding our life. And the more we fear about losing stuff, the more we are with this life, the more we are connected to this life, and this is the suffering of samsara. There will not be so much trouble in being born and die if there was not the fear. Imagine, if you didn't fear the death, would you mind if you are born or you die? If you didn't fear the suffering in life, to suffer in life, will it matter much if you were born or you die? No. But it is the suffering that there is in the process of being alive and in the process of dying that we try to avoid all the time. And this is the way of samsara, and this is why the yoga tell us this is our prison, this structure of all the time needing to do action in order to stay alive, all the time needing to do action in order not to lose the life, or in order to gain pleasure or not to lose the pleasure, or not to get suffering. This takes us into the world of experience. We need more and more experiences all the time. None of them is constant. All of them is temporary. All of them will lead us to another action and another action, and eventually to the suffering that there is in the cycle of birth and death. And this happens to all of us naturally, and when I look at my life, I can see how it is. How I always look for the pleasure, how I always try to avoid suffering. I can see the fear of suffering or losing something I like. I can see in myself the fear of death, of dying, or suffering in the process of dying. So I know this works as the Sankya says. And so this is the process of Boga. I invite you to think about it and to see it in action, and to see that you are not free there. That as long as you work when the clashes are the source of your actions, you always have to do another action and another action and another action. You are not free there. As long as you identify yourself with this structure, with the mind, with the thoughts, the ideas, the identifications, with your actions, you are not free there. There will always be this restriction, this limit. And in our next lecture, what we are going to explore is the way of apavarga. To see, we said this is naturally happening to all of us. Then to take the other way to apavarga, we will need to do some special effort. We will need some special techniques that will take us there. But this is after the break. Any questions? Okay, so we take a half an hour break now, and we continue later with apavarga. Thank you.